Now, Matt Harvey had Tommy John surgery. When he had it, he tried to pitch longer. When he had it, he said, I'm going to come back early. Everybody said, no, no, no. You're the young ace of the New York Mets. We want you to heal properly. We want to make sure everything's right. Now, the Mets have had problems with all sorts of injuries over the years, not handling them right. The Mets staff has been terrible, their medical staff. And they've been embroiled in so many scandals, it's hard to keep track of them all. But let me remind you that earlier in the season, Terry Collins said he felt that leaving Johan Santana in to pitch a no-hitter, to complete his no-hitter, ruined Johan Santana's career. Johan Santana, in the same article to Sports Illustrated, said that was probably true, but he doesn't regret anything that happened. He is the latest in a litany of Mets who have gone down to injury, who have been pushed further than their limits, who have not been healed properly, who have been mismanaged. Scott Boras is one of the best agents in baseball. He's a super agent. And Matt Harvey and Scott Boras and Dr. James Andrews, who did the surgery for Tommy John surgery on Matt Harvey, this young, amazing stud ace who's going to be the Mets franchise player for years, said, you know what, we don't want Matt Harvey pitching more than 180 innings this year. It's his first year back from Tommy John surgery. Let's take it easy on him. Let's let him heal. But the Mets organization is only looking short term because the manager, general manager, want to keep their jobs, and the ownership want to make, as Johnny Manziel would do, tons of money, especially because the Mets have to keep refinancing and are in financial trouble clearly because of the Madoff situation still, and they're dealing with their loans and everything. Okay, that's fine. And it's fine to say, I want to make money. That is fine as well. And it's fine to say you want your baseball team to win and you want them to go far in the playoffs. But when Scott Boras and James Andrews said no more than 180 innings, and he's about 166 innings in right now, the New York papers and management of the New York Mets went nuts. How could this be? He's a hypocrite. He wanted to pitch before, and he said he'd come back early, and now he doesn't want to pitch past 180 innings. These are the same people who would write that the Mets mismanaged him, that Matt Harvey should have been limited to 180 innings. If at 181 innings he gets hurt. It's the same people who will say, oh, we should trade Matt Harvey right now because he's clearly peaked. The same people who say Matt Harvey has an attitude problem. Here's a guy who's done nothing but perform well for the New York Mets, given them everything he's gotten. And you know what? His management says, I realize that the New York Mets have screwed this up several times. We're going to step in. We're going to say 180 innings, hard limit. Let's not have him have any more. Now, you can either maybe win today and have him extend to 189, 200 innings maybe, and maybe get hurt. Maybe. It's a variable. And maybe win today. Or you can have this guy for 6 or 7 years be a prolific pitcher for the New York Mets, the face of the franchise, filling seats. You can have short-term gain today, or you can have long-term gain just by shutting him down. What do the Mets want to do? Of course, they want short-term gain. What do the fans want? Of course they want short-term gain, and I understand that. What do the papers want? Oh, the papers just clearly Ken David off of the New York Post. I cannot believe you wrote this article. They clearly just want to be as sartorial as possible and as undiplomatic and as hypocritical as possible. And they literally, shame on you, Ken Davidoff, just want to literally say something negative at every single turn, looking to say something negative. Instead of looking at it and go, wow, the guy's agent actually wants to look after his career. It's not about the money he could make in the future. Well, maybe for the agent it is, but it's actually for the guy's longevity, for you as a fan to be able to watch him longer, for him to be able to perform longer. His doctor says shut him down, but oh, the Mets say let's have him pitch because we're doing really good and we want him. And then Harvey says, I'll pitch in the playoffs. I'll pitch in the playoffs, but shut me down now. And, oh, the papers kind of ease up a little. And, oh, the Mets kind of ease up a little. Well, first of all, that should have been cleared up in the very beginning. But I got to tell you something. I love that Matt Harvey went to the Players Tribune, Jeter's site, to directly tell fans what he's thinking. I love that, number one. Number two, I love that he stepped out and said, it's my doctor and my agent who are going to handle this. I love that. He took himself out of the middle. Number three, this should have never been public. It should have been all taken care of behind the scenes. Number four, why is Doc Gooden advising anybody on their career? He's the last person that should be doing that. What about Ronnie Darling? Ron, come on. I'm not going to sit here and argue that guys were tougher in 1986, and I'm not going to sit here and argue that in the 1930s and 40s, Babe Ruth could pitch a complete game back-to-back days and then hit home runs. And I'm not going to sit here and argue that guys threw forever, even before that. Okay? The game changes. The way we treat players changed. The medical changes. But I can tell you that the Mets have only screwed up, historically, medical issues with players. They've only hurt players. They've only ended careers. And if Scott Boras, the super agent, and the doctor, Dr. James Andrews, who is very well respected, who, by the way, said, if you remember, let's not put Robert Griffin III on a football field right now, and Mike Shanahan and Robert Griffin and Dan Snyder and the Redskins organization disregard that, put him into a playoff game, got him hurt. Andrew still said, I don't think this guy should go back out. They put him back out, and his career's never been the same. Now, I don't know if Robert Griffin III would have been okay today, but he's on the verge of being cut by the Redskins. He's become the second stringer already. But yet, let's take our ace, Matt Harvey. Let's disregard what Dr. James Andrews, probably the best doctor to ever do knee and elbow and shoulder surgery for pitchers and athletes, or the most well-known certainly, and says, you know what, shut him down at 180. Let's take what he says and completely disregard that so that maybe we can win a playoff game or two or five or even the World Series and have a short-term gain. Or we can win enough games that we can trade this guy because he's at his peak. I think it's foolhardy. I think it's short-sighted. I think it's exactly what the Mets normally do and what they shouldn't do. But the fact that they ran to the papers and complained, and the fact that the papers bit on that instead of saying, wow, here's a guy who's saying, you know what, I'm not going to be like every Met in the past. I'm not going to go down to these injuries. I'm going to listen to what my doctor and what my agent is telling me. I'm going to get better. I'm going to make sure I'm better, and I'm going to come back better and better than ever before, and be healthy going forward. Now, there's no guarantee he'll be healthy going forward. There's no guarantee he won't re-hurt the arm, but you have to put a guy in a position to do the best he can. Now, do I think that maybe he could take a little rest at 180 and then pitch in the playoffs? I absolutely do. But that's not up for me to decide. That's up for Dr. James Andrews to decide. And I believe in guys being tough as nails. But that doesn't always work, and we've seen it time and time again not work. So let's follow what the doctor says. Let's err on the side of caution, and let's have a Mets franchise pitcher that can lead this team for years to come with a young pitching staff and an aging veteran in David Wright who can maybe play another 3 or 4 years at a high level, and maybe we can actually win a World Series, and not just 1, 2, or 3, or at least be competitive for the next 5 years, as opposed to let's try and win it all this year, which, as much as I'm a Mets fan, as much as I want to believe, come on. There's a lot of great baseball teams out there, and it's a long shot at best. It's not that it can't happen. But look at the situation and look at it from a business standpoint. You're going to make a lot more money filling seats for 5 years than you are winning a World Series or getting to it this year. So think about that. And again, I like Ken Davidoff. I've worked with him at the New York Post. I think he's a great guy. I think Chris Shaw, who's the editor of the sports department, is a great guy. I think that Mike Vaccaro, who also wrote a questionable article, who I love and have a great relationship with, and I love his articles, calling Matt Harvey a hypocrite, is a great guy. But I think you guys need to look in the mirror and say, what are we doing as journalists? Do we have to write something sensational every day? Do we have to stir problems every single day? Do we have to go dig up Ron Darling and Doc Gooden every day so that we can have negative articles in the paper so people will buy the paper? We are proving here at Be Terrific, you don't have to go negative. People want positive content. We have the Terrifics. It's an army of people who are proving that good content is wanted and needed. And let me tell you something. The article should have been written. Matt Harvey, his doctor, and his agent are looking out for not only his best interest, not only the dollars he could make in the future, but the Mets' best interest. The Mets is what I should call them. The Mets' best interest as well for the long-term viability of the franchise. Without a doubt. How many Matt Harvey jerseys are you going to sell when he doesn't play another game if he gets injured again and hurts that arm? How many? But how many are you going to sell over 5 years when he's your stud ace and take you to the playoffs every year and leading the charge? And what kind of message do you think it sends to the rest of the players? Now, this isn't a hangnail. This isn't a guy who's not tough enough. This is a guy who had Tommy John surgery on his pitching arm, came back and has pitched 166 innings and bled for you and had a great season. Some downs, but mostly ups. And the Mets are doing great, and I love that. But you got to be kidding me to write this article, to stir all this controversy, to sell a couple of papers. And for the Mets, shame on you. Just to save a job at Terry Collins or Sandy Alderson, or make some more money for the Wilpons, who do just fine, even with the financial trouble. Fresh Meadow Country Club, S600 Mercedes, wine and dine wherever you go. Nothing wrong with capitalism. Nothing wrong with making money. But think about what you're doing here. Think about what you've done in the past. Think about it. Think long and hard. Look at all these guys you've sent down the road of being injured and badly injured and career-ending injuries. All because you wanted to squeeze another 16 or 14 innings out of them, or 20 innings, or even if it's another 40 innings out of them. Yes, you might need it down the stretch, I get it, but you're going to mortgage the future to win today. And sometimes that makes a lot of sense. If Matt Harvey was 38 years old, you might do that. If Matt Harvey was trade bait at 35 years old, you might do it. I didn't like the Tony Amonte for Glenn Anderson trade. Glenn Anderson scores a pivotal goal for the 1994 New York Rangers in the Stanley Cup Finals. The Rangers mortgaged the future in Tony Amonte, who went on to be an amazing player, for a guy who was a sure thing for the playoffs. Okay. I didn't like the trade. I accepted it, and it worked out. Fine. This is not that case. This is a guy who should be babied at this point to make sure that he has long-term success. This isn't Jabba Chamberlain. Oh, we're going to limit his innings because we don't want to blah, blah, blah. And then you wind up screwing with his head, and he's never the same. Different situation. This is a guy who knows what he's doing, who's clearly got the stuff, but you got to take care of that arm. That arm is the only thing. That is it. Come on, Mets. Don't stand for my entire team sucks. Stand for Mets. Let's go, Mets. Let's go, Mets. You got to believe. Stand for all that stuff. Stand for the positivity. Stand for the 86, the ruckus that Shea Stadium was. Stand for the excitement. Don't stand for taking a guy and having him go out and throw out that arm. And then he's Johan Santana. Or any of the other guys who have gone through the system and been churned through the mill. It doesn't make sense. And for the New York papers to come down hard on Matt Harvey. You want to come down on Matt Harvey, how about the fact, which you did do this, that he went to a Ranger game when the Mets were playing, and it was a Ranger playoff game. Now, he wasn't pitching, but I still think you did the right thing and that he needed you to come down on him. I think the attitude's a little askew, and he should be at the stadium with his boys. That's my feeling. Maybe that's old school. That's something to come down on Matt Harvey for. Not because his doctor says shut him down, or his agent, because they're looking not only at his long-term health for him, but also for the Mets. So yeah, let's trade the best player on the team, the ace, the guy who is your stud ace, who's going to be the future of the Mets, as both Ken Davidoff and Mike Vaccaro wrote. Let's trade him because he's at his peak, and clearly he doesn't really want to pitch. So the guy you're dying to have pitch 200 innings, but only wants to go 180 on doctor's orders, let's trade him because he can't be worth anything in the future if he's not going to pitch now. How about that, Rant Terrifics? I had to get that off my chest.